So when you look at the Missouri River today, it's maybe 100 yards across, something like that, 200 yards across. At the time Lewis and Clark were here, it was a mile across. Throughout Missouri, throughout these lower states, it was over a mile across in some places. So if they were to look at this river today, they would not have recognized it. The Army Corps of Engineers has come through the entire Missouri River and basically took all the wetlands away. This river, as wide as it was, would have consisted of islands, and they usually camped on islands when they could for safety. And then all sorts of swamps, big sandbars, and that's why it was very difficult to go up. Today, it's just this narrow corridor, so it's a lot easier to travel up or down the river today. So the river doesn't look like it did at that time. We are in a place where they crossed in June 12th. June 12th. We're still in the state of Missouri here, and they saw two pirogues coming down the river, and they pulled the guys over and talked to them, and they were trappers from up north, and Lewis ended up buying from them 300 pounds of what he called Voyager's grease. It was buffalo grease, like buffalo fat. And they may have used it for food, but they probably used it as insect repellent. One of the things they were constantly plagued with was mosquitoes, gnats, and ticks, but the mosquitoes were the worst. And they brought mosquito nets to try to protect them. But the mosquitoes would come up in swarms. They couldn't keep them out of their eyes, their faces. They were just mosquitoes everywhere. And so in the evening, they would get in really close to the fire for the smoke because it would keep the mosquitoes away. But it was a constant vigilance trying to keep the mosquitoes away. And the mosquitoes carried, malaria, which they didn't know about yet. The men were experiencing all sorts of health problems. On June 17th, Clark writes in his journals that the men had boils, ulcers, he also mentioned dysentery, but all sorts of skin problems. And he blamed it on the water. They didn't know that the mosquitoes were carrying things at that time, but he blamed it on the muddy water. If you look at the river, it's pretty muddy. It's not good to drink out of. And so that's what he thought was the problem. And of course the muddy water that they were drinking was part of the problem. But the bigger problem was what they were eating basically was meat and water. They weren't eating any fruits. They hadn't found any fruits yet, and almost no vegetables. And so it was their diet, which was the problem. They had some cornmeal, but the diet was the big problem that was causing all these skin irritations and everything. But in order to keep the mosquitoes off them, they would take the bear. They hunted bears in this area, and they also had now the Voyager's grease or the buffalo grease. They would take the fat and they would rub it all over their faces and rub it all over anything that was exposed, which is kind of gross, but that kept a lot of the mosquitoes away. All right.